The Dateable podcast is an insider's look into modern dating that the Huffington Post calls one of the top 10 podcasts about love and sex. I'm your host, Yue, former dating coach turned dating sociologist. You'll also hear from my co-host, Julie Krafchick. On each episode, we'll talk to real daters about everything, from sex parties to sex droughts, date fails to diaper fetishes, and first moves to first loves. We are excited you've joined us for an older episode. While our earlier seasons were all about dating in San Francisco, we quickly realized all the themes and learnings are universal for all daters. So we shifted to covering dating from all around the world as the seasons progress. The fun part is, things happen first in San Francisco, the tech epicenter and counterculture capital of the world. We love for you to keep tuning in to our older episodes, but there is no set order to listen in, so feel free to jump to more recent seasons or relevant episodes for you. Enjoy the show.
I was so excited to get my shipment from Last Bottle Wines in the mail the other day, full of incredible red wines, all from Napa Valley. I love wine tasting, so having this to my door couldn't be happier. Also, couldn't be more excited that today's episode is brought to you by Last Bottle Wines. If you don't know already, they're a Napa-based online wine shop with a twist. They offer just one handpicked wine per day until it sells out, and they're always at incredible prices. We're talking 30 to 70% off retail. And the best part is that there's no subscriptions, no fees, and no minimum purchase. And I could not be more excited to bring this offer right now because they're having a marathon sale, which is coming up March 28th and 29th. Even better, we're offering Dateable listeners 10% off your first order with code DATEABLE. So if you are a wine lover like me, this is a great time to join. And did I mention that shipping is 100% free? So what are you waiting for? Mark your calendar for March 28th and 29th, or get on it earlier if you want. You can sign up at lastbottlewines.com and use code DATEABLE and find out why Last Bottle is the most fun way to discover and buy amazing wine. We are so thrilled to be partnering with Hinge. Hinge is the dating app designed to be deleted. As you all know, I'm a huge Hinge advocate as I met my partner of almost 3 years on the app. Even before meeting him, Hinge was always my go-to app because I met more relationship-minded people here and had some great dates. Clearly, I haven't been on the app for a little while, but I re-downloaded it to check out some of the new features. One that stood out to me was the voice prompt, my best friend's take on why you should date me, where your friend can hype you up. Not only does this make the profile creation less daunting, but it's not always easy to see your own green flags. So to test it out, I asked Yue some fun prompts to get her take on what I could put if I was dating again. So the first one, how long have we known each other? What was your first impression of me and how has that changed?
Julie and I have known each other for almost 10 years. My first impression of Julie was that she's very social, but I've learned that she has a lot more depth to her beyond the social butterfly that she is.
My next prompt, what do you think are my green flags?
I would say she's deeply loyal, she believes in love, curious mindset, and she is fearlessly ambitious.
And then last but not least, what kind of friend am I?
Julie is the kind of friend who will always have your back, no matter what.
Damn, that feels nice to hear. So download Hinge and try voice prompts today. Then find someone worth deleting the app for.
The Dateable podcast is hosted by me. I'm Yue, a former dating coach in New York turned active dater in San Francisco. On each episode, you'll hear commentary by my co-host, Michael Vargas, a fellow dating coach with a clinical psychology background, my producer, Julie Krafchick, and other surprise co-hosts. Hey, don't forget to check out our next event on September 30th. The theme is No Pants, and we will again be doing a live stage performance of the old school TV show, The Dating Game. Get all the details by going on our Facebook page under Dateable Podcast. Our last event sold out, so get your tickets soon. This episode of Dateable is brought to you by 500 Brunches. 500 Brunches connects like-minded people with similar interests to meet in real life over brunch. You answer a quick questionnaire about your interests and how you spend your time, and then they'll match you in small groups of 6 to 8 at a brunch spot in San Francisco. Get a free entry into a brunch now by signing up at 500brunches.com and using the code DATEABLE. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Dateable, a show that opens up a candid conversation about dating in San Francisco. We always hear about your guys' dating stories, and today you get to hear my own dating story because this dating app called Whim reached out to me and said, Yue, we're going to set you up on this date, and we're pretty sure you're going to have a good time. So I'm like, obviously, I'm going to say yes. So it's quite the treat because the founder and CEO of Whim is in the studio with us today, Eve.
Hi.
As well as my date, Andrew.
Hello, that's me.
How awkward is this? Thank you, Andrew, for being a guinea pig. And
My pleasure.
and I have been on 2 previous Whim dates before, but this one's going to be a little bit different because obviously we're going to do a podcast right after. So, Eve, do you want to give us a little one-liner about what Whim is all about?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think you did a great job explaining it. Our motto that I love is magic, not messaging. The idea of just getting people to meet face-to-face right away. So on Whim, it's super simple. You go on, you say which nights you're free, and then you say which people you want to meet, and then beyond that, the app is going to set everything up for you. So it'll pick a specific bar, a specific time for you to meet up, and put you in touch just so you can confirm the details.
So that's exactly what happened to us. The app messaged both Andrew and I and said, you're confirmed for this date with each other at, I think it was Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Harper and Rye, which is, I think, in between both of us because you're in the marina and I'm in Nob Hill. And then helped us exchange phone numbers to open up the conversation. And now I'm pregnant. So.
That's what Whim is all about.
Yay! Yeah, so we're going to flip the script. Instead of me doing the interviewing, Eve is going to interview me and Andrew. So I'm going to kick out Andrew right now.
I'll go sit alone in the hallway
With his whiskey tumbler.
with my whiskey,
That's
very
true.
tall whiskey tumbler.
Cool. So, Yue, thanks for giving me this opportunity to switch places with you.
Anytime.
So, okay, I've been dying to ask you all week because you actually texted me and Julie, like, after midnight, the night of your date, that, like, you were like, totally good date, not what I expected. And then I was pressing you for details, but you refused to give them to me. So I've just been dying to know all week, how was the date?
So this is the thing, because we all looked at his profile together. And all of us were like, he looks a little fratty, a little bro-y. And honestly, you couldn't see his face in any of his photos. You just see him smiling really big, and he's with friends, and like he's shirtless. And I thought, okay, he's at least going to be a really fun date, and he's going to give a really fun interview. That's what I thought, right? So I didn't really think there was going to be much to the date other than just like 2 people having fun on a Tuesday night. Overall, the date went exactly opposite of what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
He's incredibly intellectual, very smart, has so much depth.
I mean, everything you just said was a huge surprise to me as well. It's just not what I expected from him.
And when he comes back in here, I'm going to be like, you need to change your profile photos because there's just so not representative of who he is.
And it makes you wonder, like, how many of us, like, how many people out there are totally misrepresenting themselves
Absolutely.
in their profiles. What were you feeling about the whole process going into it? Like, would you say you were more or less nervous going into a date that's kind of just fixed up without any messaging?
I think we totally bonded over the fact that this whole idea of matching and then going on a date is so opposite of what modern dating is that we can bond over that concept. So he told me that this was his first Whim date. He was kind of nervous that I wasn't going to show up. And I do have to admit, I was like 15 minutes late. So I think he got a little bit nervous about that. And when I finally did show up, he's like, okay, you're a real person.
I think you guys matched on a Monday. Yeah, and then the date
next
was
day.
for Tuesday night.
Because I had to leave Wednesday. So we only had 1 day worth of time to get to know each other. When we matched and he texted me, he was like, 8 o'clock, Harper and Rye, are you still down? And I wrote, actually, I'm kind of hungry. I would love to grab a bite to eat first. So then I suggested another place. What that suggestion did was a starting point.
Right.
And that's like a lot of time that's a hurdle with dating, online dating. It's just that one person making a suggestion.
Right.
So that took that effort out of it. And so I was like, well, if it suggested Polk Street anyway, let's just go to Upsider. They have food there and drinks, and then we can head on over to Harper and Rye.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And we see that happen on the app a lot, actually. Like, people will report back after their date that they'll be like, oh, we ended up picking another place, but we still met up that night. Something I'm always super curious about is the impression that we're giving off when we meet somebody in person, and how's that different from the impression we think we're giving off? So I want to know, you already said a little bit about how he came off, but I want to hear a little bit more about how you thought he came off.
Stereotypically, I thought he was going to be very loud and, just gregarious. I walked in expecting him to, be with open arms, be like, Yue, come over here, you know? And I looked around, there was nobody that fit that description. And I saw this guy sitting by himself at the bar, and I walked over and I was like, Andrew? This is the first time I was unsure if this was actually the person I was meeting. He just had such a quiet demeanor about him, or just a subdued confidence about him. And then he was drinking a glass of wine. All right. We're at Upsider where they have ciders. He was drinking a glass of wine. He's like, yeah, I don't really drink cider. I drink wine. Wow, you're so sophisticated. Yeah. And then he was like, I was just waiting for you to order some food because I'm not that hungry. And later he told me he doesn't really eat on first dates because he thinks it's awkward. So I thought that was funny. And I'm like, I always eat on first dates because I'm always hungry. So we ordered some food, and he went right into kind of his life story.
So it sounds like he came off to you confident, intellectual, maybe a little bit quiet.
Quiet confidence.
Quiet confidence.
Yeah.
I like that. It's very attractive.
I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah.
So then he tells me basically his whole life story. And this is a thing. When someone's very interesting, has an interesting past, they love talking about themselves, right? Mm-hmm. So he did love talking about himself, which I like too, because I enjoy hearing about other people's stories. So I learned this about him. He's lived in many countries. He speaks Arabic and French. He was taking Chinese classes. He is a former pro poker player. He started when he was 19, paid his way through college with his poker money. Yeah. And he tells me that he's very mild-mannered because he's learned that from poker. He doesn't let anything affect him.
Poker face.
Poker face. But he says it drives his girlfriends crazy because when they're in a fight, he doesn't show any sort of emotions, right? So I can he's very self-aware.
Sorry, what were you thinking and feeling at this point in the date? Were you actually starting to be like, oh, this guy's cute, I could actually be into it, or?
Oh, yeah, I feel so physically, when I first met him, I was like, this guy's really way cuter than I expected him to be. Because he looks nothing like his photos. Yeah. He has the cutest smile. This just a really earnest, sweet smile, right? When he smiles, you just can't help but smile. Yeah. So, physically, I think he's very attractive. While we're talking about kind of his background, I kept thinking I think I met my match in terms of someone dominating a date. Because usually when I go on first dates, I dominate the conversation because I feel like I drive the conversation. Mm-hmm. This guy flipped the script on me. He was talking about himself and then asking me very pointed questions.
Pro dater or something.
Like a pro dater.
The whole thing sounds like a pro dater.
Which made me skeptical of him, right? I'm like, oh, maybe he's just a really sweet talker. Yeah. He's obviously really good at this. Yeah. And he admitted at one point, he's like, I will always have a good date because I can talk to anyone.
Whoa,
but it's hard to, yes. But he said, but it's hard to find a connection. Yeah. Which is exactly what I feel. So we're finishing up dinner at this point. I'm finishing up my cider. I'm getting a little tipsy.
Have you gotten to say anything yet?
Not much. Okay. Not much. So then he notices and he's like, how can I connect with you better?
He said that out loud?
Yes. So then he's like, are you having a good time on this date? I just want to check in.
Oh, that's
right?
kind of cool.
So I thought the check-ins were interesting. And he kept checking in throughout the rest of the night. Are you having a good time? Do you think we're connecting? Do you, so we change bars. We go to Aces, which is one of my favorite bars because it's very East Coast. It's a New York bar. He'd never been there. So we went there, and I think that's when the dynamic changed. He's like, something's up. You have a wall up. What's going on in your head?
Wow, he was really trying to break down the barriers and really breaking down. Connect.
So then I was like, fine. If you're going to ask me this, I'm going to answer, which is I have a lot on my mind, right? For one, I had to go back to SoCal to see my parents because my mom fell and she fractured her spine. And 2, I had just finished teaching a really high-intensity dance class. I was exhausted. Frankly, I just wanted to listen to him talk, and I didn't really want to talk too much. So then that opened up a whole conversation about life, priorities.
And did you suddenly feel more energized?
I wouldn't say energized. I just felt more at ease with him. Because now we're connecting on a different level, even if it is just a deeper friendship. And then he walked me home, and he kissed me goodnight.
Okay, wait, back up. I always want to hear the details of the kiss. It was like right at your doorstep.
It was right downstairs outside my gate.
How long was the kiss?
I don't know, like 5, 6 seconds.
Okay, solid. It was like a solid first date kiss.
Yeah, and then he was like, okay, how about when you get back on Saturday before we record this podcast, how about I'll pick you up from the airport, which is a really nice gesture. And I was like, I can't do that because I have to run to something else. And then he's like, okay, well, when can I see you? So this is where it gets complex because I think timing and dating go hand in hand. He's leaving for Burning Man tomorrow for a whole week where he can't call or text, right? He's completely untethered. Then I leave for Europe for 2.5 weeks. So I think it's one of those things. It's like, timing is not on our side right now.
But don't you think, though, that if the two of you are meant to actually end up together, that you'll find a way, when 3 weeks have passed, which isn't actually that much time in the grand scheme of things, that you'll find a way to reconnect?
I think if you're meant to be with someone, obviously you find your way back to them. So this is a dilemma I'm facing, and I kind of alluded to this before, Eve, is I'm not just seeing, he's not the only person I've been seeing, obviously. So he was a first date. There's another person that came before him. And I really feel like in the time that Andrew and I have apart, my relationship with this other person is just going to strengthen.
And it's also, you might have a connection, but you met one time.
Exactly.
It's hard.
It's not strong enough of a history for me to pine over this guy over the other one.
3 weeks.
For 3 weeks.
Of course. So you've gone on plenty of online dates in your life. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this first date?
1 being...
So 1 is the absolute worst, definitely never want to see their face again. And 10 is dream come true and you hope that you eventually get married and run off into the distance.
I would say a 9.
Wow. So it was an awesome date.
Really great date. Maybe it's not super romantic. I still feel like I connected with a real human being and we were just so present with each other.
If he didn't hit you up and say what's going on and then push you to open up and you never had that second part, how would you have rated the beginning of the date?
That's a great question. I would have said it was a 5. It would have been like every other date I've been on where you walk away going, oh, it was nice. We got to know each other, but did we connect? Not really. Did I get to know a real person? Not at all. But you're like, it was pleasant,
So that's a huge tip for people listening, I think. Listen to how powerful it is when you actually cut the BS and get to the real stuff. And it sounds kind of cliche. Everyone's like, yeah, good idea. But then nobody does it. I mean, what percentage of your dates do you actually get to get this real on?
And it felt vulnerable. And I think, that's a key word, right? It's feeling vulnerable around someone. That's when you truly connect. For me to tell him about what's going on with my family, I mean, it really felt vulnerable, but that's when it's okay, I actually can see myself having this person in my life.
Would you go on another date with him?
If I wasn't seeing someone else, I totally would. So I don't know. I'm debating whether I should tell him today or not. That's what I'm debating on.
Tricky.
What do you guys think?
I think you should.
And I think that's a perfectly valid, beautiful, honest thing that you could tell Andrew, right? If it comes up.
So let's bring Andrew in.
Welcome back, Andrew.
Thank you very much. No problem.
We're just going to get right into it. I'm dying to know, how was the date?
Well, I'm a little self-conscious now because I know you just asked that question a few moments ago.
Yes.
But honestly, from my point of view, the date was great. I think we had an awesome time.
Wait, I just want to say, we're gonna be you can be totally honest.
Oh no, I intend to be very
It's just
honest.
you and like tens of thousands of listeners.
Yeah, no, I have no
pressure.
problem
Okay,
with
good.
honesty. Yeah, I had a
Okay,
great
wonderful.
time. I had a great time with Yue.
Tell me what were your thoughts going into the date based on Yue's profile about, you know, what she would be like and how the date would go?
What I knew going in was that she was beautiful and that she ran a podcast, which I found really about dating in San Francisco, which I found really interesting already because not just is the topic of interest to me, but also the fact that she, you know, runs a podcast is a really cool, unique thing to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was a little more nervous than usual, but in general, relative to other first dates.
You get to the date, you get to the bar. I don't know who got there first. Like, walk me through.
So I got
how
to the
night
bar
unfolded.
on time, and also.
Do you always get there on time?
I'm not amazing about punctuality, but for a first date, especially with someone that I'm interested in, and definitely like there's a threshold of time when you're interested in somebody where like you definitely get there on time. It's like something with like cleaning your room. Like if there's any chance that she's gonna come over to your house, like you clean the room, so it's perfect.
Yeah.
But then when she's come over like a few times, then it's like okay, well I'm not gonna worry about the room now. It's not, the first impression has already happened. So I got there on time. And Yue did not. And so I went and I got myself a drink.
Did
and
she
I
text you? Like, I'm running
She
late?
texted me like, I'll be there, you know, like 10 minutes late. And then
Okay.
I was there and then 10 minutes went
What
by.
did that do to your mood? This is something I think is important for people listening to know.
Especially women do
Yeah.
this all the time.
Well,
yeah.
so I would say that I'm above average in terms of my independence level. So
Okay.
I am actually quite happy with a nice drink, just like hanging out. I don't
you.
need to have the person be there. By the same token, you know, there's only a certain amount of time I'm gonna spend enjoying my drink, and so I definitely had this vision of like texting you, Eve, and be like, "Well, you didn't show up, so I went home."
I thought you were going to say texting me to have me come out and be like the substitute date.
Oh, well, that would have even been a much better idea. Although it would have been quite awkward when you showed up. So actually, it wasn't necessarily a bad thing that she had to be about 15 minutes late, I think. But only because when she was texting, she was kind of like trying to keep me in the loop as to what's going on. And she was explaining that she was teaching a dance class, and that was kind of why she was running late and all these things. And so already it was kind of like a brief window into this person who is becoming more interesting. It's like, okay, well now I get a sense that this is something else that she does with her life. Like she's a dance teacher. That's both cool because like she has something she's passionate about, and probably because she's in awesome shape, which is great too. And so I'm kind of like, okay, well, I'm obviously like she's texting me, so I don't think she's gonna flake or she's gonna like stay me or something like that. So I'll just have a drink and I'll hang out. And then she showed up.
So when she first walked in, what were your first impressions, like physical and all the other stuff as well?
So physically she's gorgeous, but I have gone out on a lot of first dates with like people who are physically attractive, and I'm really confident it doesn't tell the whole story. In fact, oftentimes might even be like an indicator that if someone's like too beautiful, that it might be an indicator that actually like maybe their priorities are a lot of whack.
Yeah.
Like if they spent like hours preparing on like how gorgeous they were going to be on this thing for a first date,
Right.
it's like, did you not have anything else to do with your life at that time? I start to get a little concerned.
Good to know.
And so in that sense, like the fact that you came in from dance class, got there obviously as fast as she could, I think, and then came in looking beautiful was obviously like a really good sign. But
Right.
I was probably more, she sort of has like a radiant confidence that she carries with her. And so I was more attracted to just her showing up with some swagger and sitting down.
How did she show that swagger? How does that come
Well,
out?
it's actually kind of interesting because this is it's
Taking
gonna
notes.
tie directly into my first major complaint from the date.
The plot thickens.
Which is basically that she clearly has like a lot of self-confidence and sort of carried that with her when she came in. She sort of had good body posture and she was engaging. But she was also kind of sitting like a little bit far away. She was kind of
leaning back in
like
her
leaning
chair.
like leaning back a little bit, or we're at the bar, she's on a stool, but like kind of like not really like diving into the open engagement, kind of almost, I would view it as almost like a persona. A very confident, attractive persona, but still like kind of a persona.
Like holding back, like not being like, hey, we're in this together. Let's like.
I would
get in
describe it as date talk.
Oh.
So like date talk is not real talk.
Okay.
Date talk is like, and there's to a certain degree it's necessary when you don't know someone at all, but it's where you sit down and you essentially have kind of like intellectual conversation that doesn't have any real attempt at connection.
Right.
if
Like
that
it's
makes
about
sense.
stuff and it's not about yourselves. It's more personal.
Well, yeah, we talked about things that we liked or we joked and stuff like
Right.
that, but we never, during this part of the date, we didn't have any, like, didn't get through to anything that was like deeper. And actually, at this point in the date, I was pretty sure that I wasn't going to go out with Yue again. Or I thought that I probably wasn't likely to go out with Yue again, even though she was beautiful and cool and all these things. It just felt to me like maybe she was reserved or like she wasn't into me or something like that, and just didn't really want to connect.
How was the conversational dynamic? Or do you think that you guys were asking each other an equal number of questions and doing equal amount of talking?
Yeah, this is a problem I run into sometimes, I think, because I always, like, I'm really interested in when I meet somebody new. But Yue is a great conversationalist. So she had no problems at all, like both answering my questions and being kind of interesting and funny about them, and then also asking me questions about my life. So I didn't think that the issue was like one of awkwardness or one of inability to carry the conversation or be interested in what the other person had to say.
Yeah.
It was much more of a question of, at what point is this going to get to a level where we are actually going to like talk to each other as if we know each other instead of talking to each other as if we're never going to see each other again. I wasn't totally sure. I will say though, these things take time.
Yeah.
And there are like a lot of things that sprinkle in. Just spending even superficial time with somebody that you develop some kind of like, you learn about them and you like learn some things. So, you know, Yue sat down and she said, well, she got some food. She was hungry. She was coming from this dance thing. And just what she ordered for food was super funny to me, and also was very indicative of like the kind of person.
Order?
So I was, I had already eaten a little bit prior to the date, and so I was like, well, I get like a salad or something like that. And she's like, how about the meatballs? Can we get the meatballs?
Yeah,
and I was just like, all right, like
okay. And
that's
as a
confident.
guy, what's your?
Oh,
I always wonder this actually when I'm ordering food and the guys are watching me. Like, what's your thinking about her as she's ordering meatballs and not a
So
salad?
I can't speak for every guy, but I can say for myself that I will always appreciate and prefer a woman who gets what she actually wants.
Yes.
And even if like, okay, I believe in being healthy. I think that like I want my partner to believe in being healthy. Like those things are important. But by the same token, that healthy does not mean like depriving oneself of all things that are joyful.
Right.
And if you just Yue is incredibly healthy. Like she just danced for like
She's
an
a dance
hour.
instructor.
If she wants to come have some meatballs, she can have some meatballs. Like it's not. Yeah, it's not.
She needs those meatballs.
And so so in a certain sense, I could see some windows into like the real Yue that I found really attractive, and in fact, the fact that she wanted meatballs, I really found that attractive, which is kind of funny.
Besides sitting a little bit far back from you, what was it that she was doing that made you feel like she was kind of closed off?
Do you ever watch the movie Almost Famous?
Yes, I love that movie.
There's a scene where Kate Hudson is talking to the little boy, and she's like, "How old are you?" And he's like, 18. And she's like, "Me too. How old are you really?" And he's like, 17. And they keep doing that until he eventually is like, "I'm 15." And she's like, "See, the truth sounds different." And to me, you could really just kind of tell the way she was talking to me. It just sounded different. It almost sounded like she was hosting her podcast in our date.
Right.
Which, again, she's a great conversationalist and she's really smart and quick-witted and all these things. But it never got to a point where I felt like any degree of emotional connection or response from her.
Okay.
Not because I think, like, maybe because she didn't like me or something like that, I don't know. But most likely because, partially because it's hard at the beginning for anyone to sit down when you've never talked to anyone before and sit down and, like, develop a relationship out of nothing, which everyone finds nerve-wracking. So I can understand that from the beginning. And then also you just don't know what's going on, like, in her life. Maybe there are just things that are happening in her life that make it hard for her. And before I even continue with that, like, I'm putting it all on her right now. It's also very possible that there are things in my life or the way I was acting or handling myself that was making it hard for her to connect with me. And so it's very easy to put it from an egocentric point of view. This is, well, it's just I was doing great and it was hard for her to open up. It seemed at that point like a first date like many others, except for the fact that it was organized through Whim in this way, and it was like,
And you knew it'd be on the podcast about it.
Exactly, yeah.
Like it felt like just a normal first date.
I mean, as normal as it could be, but you really haven't had the week and a half of texting to develop all this, kind of prior background, which, to be honest, one thing I love about Whim is that I kind of think that a lot of those things are not super necessary. That if you like someone, you're going to like them, and if you don't, you don't. And like, I've texted with someone that I thought was like so witty and cool, and then I went on a date with them. It was just like, wow, this is actually incredibly boring, and like I wasted so much time texting with you.
So at this point, you're feeling kind of about the date, and then what'd you do next?
So then this is where it went, or got significantly better.
Okay. Wait a second. How did you even decide to keep going at this point? Like, why?
Well,
did you keep going?
It wasn't like I still found her really attractive, and it wasn't like, and it was, again, we've known each other for like 2 hours, hour and a half, something like that. It wasn't disaster zone where it's like we have to cut this and run.
Yeah.
It's like I still think I don't have anything else planned for my night, and I still think there's something interesting or some potential here that if she opened up, maybe we could see what would happen, or if we were able to connect, I guess is a better way of saying it, because I don't know if it's really on her to open up or not.
Yeah.
So we decided to walk somewhere else. She said that she knew of a place that she really liked, and actually you could kind of tell in her body language and her tone of voice that like that was like the first real moment that she had where she was talking about this bar that she like really liked. And we go in there, and she kept describing it as a New York bar, and I love New York, and it is in every way just a divey New York bar. I don't even remember what it's called, to be honest. Aces, that's right, yeah, Aces. You know the one. Yep. And we could tell that she really liked the bar, and suddenly we started talking about things that were like the threshold of realness had been crossed, and we started talking about things that were actually important in both of our lives. I might have even called her out on being, I think I did call her out on being like a little closed off at this point, and just told her like, why are you here? Like if you are, if at this point, like, what do you want out of a date? What do you want out of a relationship? And kind of like, tell me what is really important to you.
So is that how you guys got to that next level of realness, was with you sort of offering up that gentle criticism? It
really might have been, as I try to reflect on it. I don't remember exactly what the response was, except that we kind of started to transition into like a much more authentic connection, and talked in a way that was, in my view, repeatable. Like I would like to have more conversations with her like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So then the conversation got a lot better at the second bar, and then tell me how the night ended. I
think we had 1 or 2 drinks at Aces, and then we were just having a really good time. Like I feel like the connection had sort of transcended from kind of the beginning initial like distance to the point where we were almost like acting in an intimate way by the end.
What do you mean by almost in an intimate way?
Well, like there was a lot more like physical touching. There was just like from my point of view, again, it's kind of hard to talk about a date with someone else who like it takes 2, and so she has her own point of view, which you guys have already recorded. But just like touching, being closer, being the tone of voice, the body language, all just like more affectionate and closer, I would say. And then we got to her house and to her gate and exchanged a lengthy smooch.
Lengthy, like how long would you say?
I don't know, a few minutes at least.
I like they use the word smooch.
So you've gone on a fair number of first dates in your life. On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this date?
I would say like probably around an 8, something like that.
So really up there, like pretty good.
Yeah. Obviously, the major distinguishing factor between my date with Yue and my first dates with other people is that like I definitely would want to go out with Yue again. Where I feel like a lot of dates, even really great first dates, I feel like I very rarely have had bad first dates, but it's not always somebody that I necessarily would want to go out with a second time.
And was that something you already had in your head even before going into the date, just based on your impression of her, that she was beautiful and she ran a podcast? Or you're saying the date went so awesome that you wanted?
Yeah, so usually what I find that you have to be a little bit selective, at least for myself. I have to be pretty selective for who I go out with on a first date. Otherwise, I fall into kind of a similar trap that I bet a lot of the listeners have fallen into as well, which is you find somebody attractive, but that's not really your type, or you kind of know it's not really something that you're actually interested in. And you end up going on what amounts to be a very superficial first date that's fun, and maybe you have drinks, maybe have a good time, maybe even it goes like farther physically or something like that. But you don't actually feel a degree of connection with the person. And then the next day you kind of say, I don't really ever actually want to talk to that person again, even though you had a great time with them, which I'm sure was very confusing for a lot of my past first dates.
Yeah.
Where we had a great time, and then I would just not really be that interested in getting to know that person further. But definitely with Yue, I felt at the end at least like I was definitely interested in getting to know her more.
So let's go get her.
Yeah, let's go get Yue.
Let's.
I'm back.
Yay! Welcome back, Yue. And she's in like full evening wear.
Yeah.
I know. Charlie and I are headed to this wedding later. It's really weird. I'm like super overdressed for this right now. So what did you say about me?
Okay, well, so
I didn't even ask. I wasn't even going to ask. I was just going to live with it.
first of all, is this the first time you guys are seeing each other since that first date?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
How does it feel?
Oh wow. Feels comfortable.
To be fair, we did talk on the phone for a little while, so it's not like it's been a completely
like
Yue-less
you had
existence.
1.5 dates. A Yue-less existence?
Sounds terrible, right? It sounds really sad.
Okay, well, I hope it will keep feeling good. I'm about to drop some little bombs on you guys.
Oh my god.
Because it's not that often that you hear about, like,
Never.
somebody's, the impression you were getting off.
Never.
So let me start with, like, the happy ending, which is that I think as the night progressed, I think you both felt, like, quite positive about the date toward the end. You know, like, you both felt like you were, like, connecting, and it was really real and genuine and authentic. The first half of the night, though, the part that you guys were at, what was it called? The cider? Upsider. Really fascinating. So I'm trying to think of, like, how to put this honestly, but also diplomatically.
Just say it, because I'm gonna have to hear it anyway.
Okay, so Yue, Andrew thought you were gorgeous. I think he said gorgeous and beautiful like 8 times throughout the podcast recording.
So nice. $20.
But also thought that you were a bit standoffish, maybe like putting on, like he said, like putting on a persona almost, and kind of like closed off. But luckily Andrew's not like a super judgmental guy, so he had the awareness to ask himself. He was like, you know, maybe it's not just her, maybe it's not her personality. It could be like something that's going on in her life right now. It could be this particular evening. So, you know, I think like Andrew was feeling like he just wanted to get to know you better, but you were maybe like making it like a little difficult.
That's really good feedback, because I think most of the time when I go on dates, I feel like I'm there to entertain my date. So I think a lot about how can I make this date entertaining and fun for the other
Definitely got
person.
that vibe, and
Yeah.
I was kind of just like, I wonder if she's going to stop this at some point and just
Yeah.
be like the show.
And then I'm going to chill when you want to get to know the real me.
Yeah,
So that's really
exactly.
good feedback.
Yeah, and I think maybe what happened here is I think you're both very charismatic, confident personalities, and so when you both of you went in there expecting the other person to be more of a wallflower, so then it created it's a kind of like a new unfamiliar dynamic, like a little harder to.
It wasn't like I've gone on
navigate.
dates where I've like butted heads with people before. It
Yeah.
wasn't like that.
Yeah.
Like I found you really interesting to listen to.
Yeah.
But it's definitely still at the beginning. All first dates are kind of superficial at the beginning.
Right.
So.
But what's really interesting is you both had, Andrew, very different impressions of how much talking each of you were doing. So, you know, while you were feeling like, oh, it's hard to like get Yue to open up, I think Yue was feeling like you were giving her a lot of information.
Yeah, I talk all the time.
About
I
her-
definitely.
yourself.
She's almost certainly right.
Okay. But she liked it, and Yue was, I mean, she really loved learning about you, and I think Yue was very pleasantly surprised at how different you were from how your profile on Whim made you seem.
You need to change your profile.
I haven't updated that thing in a
I'm
while.
gonna give your profile a makeover.
That's fine, yeah.
See better photos.
So-
I had to stalk you on Facebook to find more photos, and there were no photos.
Okay, and then the
It's
second
okay,
part
that's
is
fair.
really fascinating because I've obviously seen your profile as well. Looking at your profile, I think we all were, you know, we were trying to figure out what's this guy going to be like on the date and what's he going to be like on the podcast. And we thought that based on your photos and your profile that you'd be pretty fratty and like really big personality. Yeah. And Yue got there, and I think within like 5 minutes, she was impressed with how worldly you were and refined. And she said you have a quiet confidence, which is, by the way, that's like the sexiest thing a man can have is quiet confidence, and a really adorable smile.
Yes.
It's almost like your profile isn't really doing you justice.
Thank you.
Yeah,
don't thank me, thank you.
That's a much easier problem than the reverse.
Yeah, it's true.
I can honestly say
just make yourself way cooler and better. Your profile's great though.
I think the first thing I'm really struck by is how I'm so glad that you both gave it a chance to go past the first like hour and a half and on to the second venue, because it sounds like Andrew, by being proactive about just like stating the elephant in the room, like, hey, I'm having trouble connecting with you, like, can we talk about something real? Or I forget how you said it exactly.
Yeah, how did that feel when I did that?
Well, I was telling the girls, if you didn't ask me these questions, I would have walked away from that date at like 10:30 and been like, textbook good date.
Yeah, never talk to her again.
That's exactly what he said.
Yeah. Really? Yeah. Because I was like, we have a lot to talk about on the podcast. It's good enough material for me. Call it a night, going to bed, you know?
Yeah. But I think a key takeaway is that a lot of people wouldn't be that proactive
No.
and say it. Listeners can take that away and try to do that as much as possible. It's just going to help.
And I think it taught me a lesson about setting intentions when you go on dates, because usually my intentions are have a great date. Now I think my intentions would be different. It would be like, really get to know this person. Try to think of it as getting to know a real person, another human being. And what is that like?
So is this experience actually going to change the way you date going forward?
Yeah, and I think I hope it changes everyone's experience, because I think, you know, Julie and I have talked about this. We're so self-focused when it comes to dating that we forget to show our true selves. Like, instead of trying to get the other person to like us back, try to figure out if you like the other person first, you know, get to know them first.
Well, yeah, I think that like the hardest part is just figuring out why someone's actually there. So like, I just think I even asked you that, like, why are you here? Like, what do you want out of this? And that often is a really hard question for people to answer.
Yeah.
If I go out with somebody who just wants to have a great date, I don't call them. Right?
Yeah.
But like, if I went out with someone that like I wanted to get to know, like Yue went home to see her family like a few days ago, and like I was curious to know what that was like for her. You know what I mean? And so that is a different experience than if I just went to go have a fun time.
Yeah.
You know, I can go to Great America and have a fun time there. That's fine.
I think of it as like, you're 29. We haven't met each other in 29 years. We have 29 years of information to catch up on, right? So I feel like there is a lot that you want to tell the other person, but you want to think about like, why do you want to tell the other person? Right. And what are you sharing with them?
And I think it's interesting that at the end of the day, that wasn't the part of the date that went well.
No,
right?
Just putting the information out there and telling someone about there. The reality is no one really cares. Like, they just want to like have a connection, and then over time they can learn that stuff.
It's so true. I mean, I have to say, for my personal dating experiences, I would say 50% of the time on a first date, the guy is in this mode of let me show you who I am, because he thinks he thinks he has to sell himself.
Yes.
But really, like, all I want to do is connect, and all you want to do is connect, and all you want to do
Well,
is
we
connect.
do kind of, I mean, to give the 50% of guys here who are getting a bad rap some love, we do kind of have to sell ourselves in a little bit. Like, Yue all you guys have lots of options. It's not as though like, and it's also difficult at the very beginning of a relationship when you don't know anything about the other person. It's also difficult to just lead off with some kind of like deep connection that lets you talk about real stuff.
Right.
I actually like the fact that we didn't talk about work. We didn't talk about work till like hours into, and it was like kind of a...
We talked about like 3 seconds.
Yeah, so we're like, okay, done with that. Let's talk about life experiences.
But I think the key takeaway is that when you started to just get authentic and have that, that's when there was magic on this date.
Yeah.
And like you said, we all have options. You have options too. Everyone has options. But it doesn't really matter how many options are if you connect with one person.
Of course.
So let's get to the
Great to
next
hear.
part about would you go on a second date?
Oh, I feel like they should recap it themselves to each other live.
I just think timing is not on our side, because we talked about this too. When you have momentum in the beginning, then the relationship can really build and grow. But we're about to enter 3 weeks of not seeing each other. And actually a week of that is you at Burning Man, which means no sort of communication whatsoever.
I totally agree that we definitely can't date in the next 3 weeks. Completely agreed on that.
Not possible.
And I also agree that it's definitely way more difficult to resuscitate a relationship when there's like essentially space has been injected into it. But that said, I think you're like a pretty special and cool person. And so it wouldn't surprise me. Like I'll definitely like try to stay in contact with you when I get back. It wouldn't surprise me if we went out again and had a great time. I'm not going to project beyond that because I really think that our next date, if there is one, will be a lot more like a first date than it would be like a second or third date. And no matter what, because we did this the right way, we'll still be friends.
We talked about this as well on our date, is you never know at what point you enter into someone's life when you go on a date with them. And you don't know who else they're dating and you don't know at what stage. So I was telling the girls, I think one of the other factors playing into our future is the fact that I started dating someone before and I met this person before you. Mm-hmm. And I really think in the next 3 weeks, that relationship could strengthen.
Are you nervous about the contents of this thing reaching the ears of the person that you're dating?
Before we went on the date, I told him, I was like, you're probably going to hear this episode. I don't want this to be a surprise. So after our date, I did text him and tell him everything that happened. And we had a phone call about it, told him about the kiss, everything. I feel like we need to just be, in dating in general, I feel better if I'm just more honest and maybe just overly honest as opposed to not.
Yeah. Should I drop my bomb now too?
Yeah, let's drop your bomb.
Drop the bomb!
So I also started seeing someone a little ways before I started going out with you. It never reached the point where I felt like I had an obligation to discuss my dating activities with her, although it was close enough that like I was a little bit nervous about her listening to this podcast potentially.
Okay.
It's always difficult to say exactly like where a relationship is prior to having some of these conversations. Like it's a very weird thing because you kind of need to have the conversation at some point, but you also can't really rush the conversation about like what are we, what is happening here, and all those things. And so yeah, it's really funny to me that you brought that up.
And also on the flip side, it's weird to have this conversation on a first date or after a first date and be like, hey, I know we just had a first date, but I just want you to know I'm dating other people.
Yeah,
like that's a weird conversation too.
And I think the reality is when we talked about this date, that was before you even met this other person, right?
Yes.
So it's like, just things can change really quickly when you're single.
In the course of a few days or a few hours.
I love the takeaway of like not taking rejection personally because, and it's like time and time again, it has so much more to do with things going on in their life than you or even how they feel about you. Like you guys thought each other were awesome. I love this radical honesty. I don't know if this is like a new movement or if some people have been doing it forever, but I recently went on I dated somebody for a couple months, and I remember after our first date, which was one of those amazing days that just goes on and on and on. Like we'd walked through the rain and we had like made out passionately in front of his house. Like it was the closest I've ever gotten to love at first sight. We were kind of wrapping things up, and I said, "What are you up to this weekend?" And he looked me right in the eye and he said, "I'm going on some other first dates."
Oh my God. Wow.
And I was like, "Whoa!" I was like, "Why?" I was like, "Why did you just tell me that?"
A little too honest.
And he goes, "I disagree." He goes, "Honesty, right?" And I thought it was beautiful and amazing, and really, what would we all lose?
We don't ever have perfect like foresight. We don't really know how things will work out. And if the worst case scenario of this whole experience is that we're friends and we just like met someone that we get along with really well, then that's like higher than average like situation. Yeah. If I give any advice, which obviously I'm like very single, so maybe I shouldn't be giving advice, but like just ask someone what they want.
Yeah.
And just make it like if you're feeling something, like in order for a relationship to work, the other person has to align with what you're feeling.
Yeah.
So if you're like, "Oh my God, I'm so into you," and they're like, "Oh, I'm not really that into you," that's fine. It's good to know that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're better off not pretending that you're not into them and so you can get along, or vice versa. You're better off just putting it out there and being like, "Hey, I feel like you're not really opening up to me. What's going on?" And worst case scenario, you're like, "Well, I don't really like you very much."
Right. And like something amazing is that it seemed like you I don't want to say single-handedly, but like it was you like saying that one line that
Oh,
turned
yeah.
the whole date around. It
Completely
just shows how
changed the
like
dynamic.
so it's like you also don't have to feel like, oh, this isn't going well. It's like it's done for. It's like
Yep.
you can turn the dynamic around with just like one line and like one expression of vulnerability.
Awesome. So, listeners at home, so we want to hear your dating stories. We can change your name, we can protect your identity and the people involved in your story. So, thank you, Eve. Thank you, Andrew, for doing this. This was really fun, and I'm sweating like a crazy person right now. Like, that was nerve
Thanks for
wracking.
having me.
And last but not least,
Stay dateable.
Your dating challenge for this week is to try to find a way to connect with someone on a deeper level. It doesn't even have to be on a date. Maybe try asking someone what is really on their mind. Just try it out and let us know what happens. The most efficient way to meet new people is a combination of online and offline. 500 Brunches has your offline covered. Connect over brunch with new friends. Come alone or bring a buddy. There is always a table full of friendly faces, mimosas, and eggs Benedict. Sign up at 500brunches.com and use the code DATEABLE for a free entry. To connect with us, visit dateablepodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all under Dateable Podcast.